This guy, Matt Campbell, sadly, and I know this is a comedic show, but guys, I try to use humor to try to, as Andrew Tate would say, break us out of the matrix. We live in a fake matrix of lies. And one of those lies is that 19 hijackers were able to defeat the strongest military force in the entire world and bring down three buildings with 2 airplanes. The story doesn't make sense. They're able to find passports. There's all kinds of anomalies with the story. But tonight, we're not going to just necessarily talk about the anomalies. We're going to talk to a victim's brother. That's right. Let's bring on Matt Campbell. Matt, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Alex.
Matt, I know it's late. You're in the UK, and tragically, you lost your brother Jeff on September 11th, 2001. So do you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself and your story?
Yeah, so, I mean, my brother was 31. He worked for Reuters, and his normal place of work was sort of Midtown. But he was attending the Risk Waters conference on the 106th floor of the North Tower. And yeah, it's just one of those things. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Matt, so tell me this. Now, I'm a 9/11 truther, just like yourself. I'm a big 9/11 truther. But if you're a member of this community, and I want to talk to you about when you kind of, realize that this story was not true. But my point is this. When you get into the conspiracy world, especially with 9/11, because there are so many anomalies, there's so many real red flags where they can add kind of fake red flags. They'll say it's direct energy weapon or is this and that. I personally think, like Richard Gage, there's pre-planted explosives. But I'm saying, what are some of the wildest conspiracies that you've heard? Have people ever said you're lying, your brother didn't die? Like what's the craziest conspiracy that you've heard when it comes to 9/11 before we get into the real conspiracies?
Yeah, I mean, I've had people say that my brother didn't die. There's conspiracy theories out there that it was all CGI. No one died. Yeah, I mean, I've had all sorts of people contact me once I went public, saying it's mini nukes, it's directed energy weapons, etc., etc. But when I started questioning stuff, end of October 2001.
Oh, so right away. Wait, Matt, right away you realized. You tell me October, so you're telling me that a month later you realize this story's not adding up?
Yeah, it was an article by the late John Pilger, just basically talking about what was going on. I think the war in Afghanistan had been going for about 2 or 3 weeks. And it was just his engagement with some of the victim family members over in the States, that they didn't like what was being done in their son's name, for example. And just basic stuff like, 15 of the 19 alleged hijackers were Saudi, and they were mainly trained in the US. What are we doing in Afghanistan? And so yeah, it was a slow process. But I mean, initially, for me, it was looking at intelligence failures and just the backstory to all the hijackers and what led to the attacks. So yeah, it's been a long journey for me.
Well,
questioning.
Tell me about this. Everybody in the chat's going crazy about your hair. They're saying you have a Twin Tower haircut. What do you say about that?
I thought you were going to do some sort of clever link with your sponsor.
No, I should have. Which sponsor? Manscaped? We'll send you a free one. No, it looks good. No, okay. No, but Matt, I really love your story, not because it's a happy story, but I love that you're speaking out. That's what I love so much, because when we talk about the official narrative, it just doesn't make any sense. Flight 93, how it just, they say it was, let's roll, and they got the drink cart, and they just, were able to take over the cockpit, and they crashed the plane into the ground. I think it's obvious that plane was probably blown out of the sky or something. I mean, something happened, not the official story that it hit the ground and just we didn't see any debris. So for me, one of my biggest passions is exposing the truth on that day. So how do you think that we're going to actually wake up everybody when it comes to 9/11, and they're not going to just call us crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists?
Well, I mean, for me, and it's always been what I've been trying to do, particularly for the last 10 years, is to basically get this into court. I mean, almost all attempts at litigation around the subject of 9/11 have either failed or, they've been settled because someone pleaded guilty. So there's the Zacharias Massoui trial. You've got the ongoing pre-trial at Guantanamo Bay, which may or may not go to plea deal, may not even get to full trial. And you have the long-running 5 Saudi lawsuits, or 5 legal firms representing
people that are suing Saudi Arabia. And is your family part of that lawsuit at all, or is that
my dad's a plaintiff in the Motley Rice suit? Yeah, and
Did your family get a settlement? Because they say, this is what they said, is that the 9/11 Commission report, a lot of families like you spoke out against this. The 9/11 Commission report had, I think, 28 pages redacted, all of Saudi Arabia's involvement. So, A, we already admit that we don't know the official story because the fake official story they give us is redacted. But I think didn't they give some sort of insurance payment or something to the victims of like $30,000 or what was it, $50,000? Did they give you any cash, if you don't mind answering?
There was a victim compensation fund that was set up. My dad.
But it wasn't that much, right? Do you remember how much it was? I think it's like not that much money.
I mean, it was probably different case by case. I mean, there was a sort of a minimum amount. I can't remember, but my brother's fiance and my dad were they applied as representatives of Jeff's estate. But nothing in the settlement would prevent us from going after people who were behind the attacks. I mean, that was actually advice that I think a legal firm gave us into, it wouldn't prevent you from going after anyone associated with the terrorist attack. So, I mean, yes, I think it was just primarily to stop it going through the legal system, because obviously things start to get exposed, when you do that. And so for me, in terms of waking people up or trying to get the truth out there, for me, it's always been to try and go down this legal route. And so that's what I'm trying to do in the UK, which it's not an easy thing to do.
It has to be tougher. I would imagine that it's tougher in the UK, right? To bring awareness to 9/11, even though your brother's a UK citizen.
Yeah, I mean, there was 67 British victims. I'm in contact with probably about 15 of the families in the UK. A couple of them are very supportive of what I've been trying to do, but they don't want to go public. Some of them, they're in their 80s now. They just don't have the energy and don't want to reopen old wounds. So I mean, I respect that. It's not easy to be constantly thinking and talking about, someone's death and their murder and, in this case, the cover-up that's been going on. You mentioned Saudi Arabia. I mean, if you wanted, easy proof of basically the cover-up that's been going on, you just got to look at the, Saudi Arabia's involvement. And we're talking intelligence, the consulate, of government officials, etc. And
the way they were able to get passports with no backstory. With Muhammad Atta, I believe he got his passport after. So what do you think happened if we had to give a 9/11 Cliff Notes? What do you think happened on September 11th, 2001?
I mean, I look at it, I said, through pretty much a legal lens rather than, trying to figure out exactly what happened, because it is complicated. So, I mean, for me, what you can easily prove, and there's been various levels of proof come out over the years, is the CIA actively were protecting two of the alleged hijackers, right from the Malaysian Al-Qaeda summit in January 2000, right through to when they came into the States. Those same hijackers were given material support by Saudi Arabia. That's in the 28 pages, but there's also other documents. Interestingly enough, some documents have come out in the Guantanamo Bay pre-trial, which is further corroborating this thing that basically the CIA were running an illegal operation, protecting these hijackers.
Well, we know that the CIA, and I'm sorry to cut you off though, Matt, we know that the CIA, for the people that are playing at home, they might not know this. You can watch this movie called Charlie Wilson's War, that the CIA actually funded the Mujahideen, which fought the Russians before we were over there. So a lot of those weapons that we gave the Mujahideen to fight Russia were used against us. So in a way, inadvertently, as they'll tell you, inadvertently, we created Al-Qaeda. We created basically ISIS is what's happening today through the CIA. So it's absolutely insane that people can't connect the dots when we know that it's open record that we gave these same people weapons and then those weapons were used against us. So the CIA is involved in this 100%. Sorry to cut you off. Keep going.
Yeah. And then so, the other aspect, of course, is for me is the way in which the towers came down, which ultimately killed my brother. It's been a long time, we're looking 15 years now of a lot of evidence that has come out pointing towards the destruction of those towers. However that was accomplished and by whom, I guess from, again, that legal lens, what I'm trying to prove in the UK is to get my brother's inquest reopened. So basically, because he died abroad and his remains are identified, very small fragments, when they were repatriated to the UK by law, we have an inquest. So that's held in a coroner's court. And they're supposed to do a thorough investigation, look into, obviously the basic details, who they were, where, and when, but basically how they came about their death. And this initial inquest was held, well, it was belatedly in 2013. We know they did absolutely no investigation, no inquiry into how my brother died, which they have to by law. And also, they didn't have any evidence of the use of explosives and incendiaries. It wasn't placed in front of the coroner. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm trying to do is reopen my brother's inquest. And we have a mechanism here where, it's routinely used. So if someone, say, dies suspiciously in a jail cell or something, and a family isn't happy with the original inquest, there's a mechanism to try and reopen it. And you petition the Attorney General. And so we've done that. And twice now they've come back and denied us. We actually threatened litigation with them last year. And their case was so weak, they capitulated, withdrew that first denial. And, we thought, right, we're going to get permission here to go and reopen my brother's inquest. And January, beginning of this year, they denied us yet again. And so we're having to go again through this very expensive, very frustrating process called judicial review, where we have 3 months to basically respond and challenge again the unlawful and irrational decision that the Attorney General has made. It makes you sort of wonder, what are they scared of?
Well, then you know what they're hiding, though. But come on, Matt, you know what they're hiding. They don't want to touch 9/11 because they know it is an international event, and it's just going to cause more problems, exposing the truth. And that's why I appreciate you continuing to fight. But, it's like they say you can't beat City Hall. It's like you're definitely not going to be able to beat the UK government. But listen, I don't want to get too graphic, but I do want to describe this. So your brother was on the 106th floor. And was he hit by an actual plane? Because you say there wasn't that much left, or was he still in the building and it imploded? How did he actually perish? What would the inquest find, I guess is my point.
Well, no, I mean, they've just basically, they took what was on the death certificate, which was death, I think it's blunt trauma, you call it in the US, and that got translated into multiple injuries.
But was it blunt trauma because the plane hit him, or he was on the 106th floor and he died in the building? Do you think he got hit?
No, I think it was a very general description applied to everyone who died within the tower, majority of victims. We know it's on the 106th floor. In the actual inquest, I think there was 4 victims in total that were, because it was a joint inquest, we had 10.
Did he call anybody? There's a lot. I listened to a lot of those phone calls, people that called. There was a famous a firefighter, Oriel Palmer, that went all the way to the top. He carried a hose up there, I think, to the 97th floor, and then it ended up imploding. He was a hero. But some people were making phone calls to the family, so he didn't make a phone call at all to anybody before he passed away?
I mean, it's one of those things where I sort of, looking back, I wish I had listened more carefully. I had 2 messages on my mobile phone that had no message. I don't know.
That day, I'm sorry, you had 2 missed calls that day?
I was on holiday.
No, you don't beat yourself up. It's not your fault. You couldn't tell that the terror attack in the history is going to happen. But you had 2 missed calls that day. But
yeah, and I don't know if it was him. People obviously trying to contact me because of what had gone on. So possibly they didn't get through. But so, I mean, in terms of, without getting too graphic, so he was on the 106th floor. There were 4 victims there. So in the same inquest, there was a joint inquiry into 10 people. So 3 people, including my brother, we're talking 2% of their body. So we're talking very small bone fragments were found. There's also, we've had remains found in 2002, 2004, 2008, 2013, very small fragments. But one person on that floor was 86%. And so, although there is a great degree of pulverization, one of the things that I, in my kind of investigation and reaching out to people, was a forensic pathologist who had expertise with explosives, basically said the complete disintegration of a body occurs to do with proximity to the actual explosives. It's not an exact science, but there was one family member at the inquest who just kept repeatedly asking. He couldn't understand why, because his son was nearly whole, and everyone else that he was hearing about was small fragments. So you could kind of sense he was struggling to get his head around what he was hearing for the first time, because he obviously assumed probably that most people were like his son. But yeah,
that's terribly tragic, Matt. Okay, so there is a GoFundMe where people can support you. We're going to put a link to that, but also we have a clip to play, Jimmy. Is that true?
Say that again.
Did you have a controlled demolition clip?
Yeah, we do.
Let's just play it real quick before we let Matt go.
Okay.
Let's watch this.
Why do you lean so strongly to that part of the story? The idea now that it was a controlled demolition. Can you talk about some of the evidence that's come to light over the past few years that point to that being the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of, why are we focusing on that for the inquest? The inquest is limited in scope, i.e., it's not really concerned with who did it. It's how someone came about their death. And so that's why the inquest is the best mechanism to, get to the truth of how my brother died. I mean, in terms of evidence, there's been, evidence of thermitic reactions, high temperatures, the way that the North Tower fell at a constant acceleration for about 4 seconds. There's eyewitness testimony that's from first responders. I think in total there was, certainly over 150 first responders that are witness to either, bombs or describe them as bombs, explosions, etc. There's also expert testimony. So we have a number of engineers and physicists who have put forward evidence which formed part of our application.
And a lot of people don't talk about the elevator companies that were working on the Twin Towers right before the tower collapsed. So listen, there's a lot of evidence. And if you look at the way that those buildings fell, they were Donald Trump even said, one of the most reinforced buildings. And Donald Trump, the day of the attack, when he was interviewed, you saw that interview, Matt, I'm sure he speculated that there would have needed to be bombs in there because he had saw the damage from the original bombing in 1993. And he said that the pillars were so strong, it didn't even mess up the building. I mean, it messed up the parking garage, but he said that was such a strong building. I went and toured it after it. They needed some serious bombs to bring that building down because it was such a strong, double reinforced, over-engineered building. So it's not crazy. I don't think you're crazy at all, Matt. And I just hate that we live in a world where we're talking about this. One of the most viral videos we had this past year is that we asked potential vice president candidate Vivek Ramaswamy if he thought 9/11 was an inside job. And he said yes. He said that the 9/11 Commission report was incorrect and, omitted a lot of important information. And then because of that, though, Matt, the mainstream media went crazy on him. They turned him like he was denying I'm just saying he became the biggest conspiracy theorist in the world for stating facts. So it's an uphill battle with the mainstream media. Have you gotten any attention whatsoever or any help from any quote unquote mainstream media outlet?
Yeah, I mean, I think really in the UK, it's only been one journalist at the Daily Mail who, consistently over the years.
I like Daily Mail, but they're like, I mean, that's almost like God. I mean, I love Daily Mail. I'm happy they're doing it. I look at it every day, but Daily Mail is almost like, the Inquirer or something. But
it's a tabloid, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's very hard to get them to take things seriously, and it's frustrating because there are a lot of dots, you can connect them, and I just want the truth of certain parts of it that really frustrate me, which is in particular how my brother died. To see the light of day in a court where there is at least a better chance of getting to the truth. I'd just like to say that that you mentioned the crowdfunder that we're doing. The easiest way people can find the link is if you go to ic911.org. There's a link to it's a British website called Crowdfunder.
Crowdfunder. I said GoFundMe. Excuse me, Crowdfunder. And we'll put the link in there. Go ahead, sir.
But that would be great because it is expensive. Judicial review, what we're trying to do is one of the most expensive things to do in the UK. I think they do it deliberately to make it so hard. They're just trying to exhaust you. Lawfare, I guess, is what
it's a lawfare. They want to make it where you can't even afford it. So, okay, before you go, now tell us the last thing, Matt. I mean, when you think about your brother Jeff, now it's 23 years. He worked at Reuters. What would Jeff be doing now if you had to speculate? I know that's kind of a weird thing, but if the terror attack didn't happen, like, what do you think Jeff would be like today? I mean, the world we live in is not the same. I mean, what do you think he would think of the world we live in today?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he definitely wanted kids. He was a great uncle to my then. I've got 3 daughters. I only had 2 daughters then, and I'm just really sad that.
Did Jeff have any kids? Did Jeff have any kids? Oh, okay.
He just got engaged.
No,
he was only 31. It was that that you start thinking about starting a family and stuff. I just find it really sad that I've not spent the last 23 years with him growing up. There's only a year between the two of us.
So y'all were y'all were in the same grade basically. I mean, 1 grade apart. So y'all, went to school. Wow. Okay.
And just my mum and dad, who have lost their son, and I can't imagine, being a parent myself, what it's like to lose a child, out of order, if you know what I mean, time-wise. They shouldn't go before you.
No, never. It's always the most tragic thing. Okay, before you go, my producer, Jimmy, and he's an idiot. He went to Princeton. Don't even get me started. He keeps on asking me about your hair. What do you want to say?
I love your hair. I need the full story. What's the inspiration? What would you call it? How do you get those frosted tips so beautiful? Tell me everything.
Well, I used to have kind of a mohawk, messy hair. There was a band called Jesus and the Mary Chain, and I like kind of punk, post-punk, bands when I was a teenager in my 20s. And, I started going bald as I got older. And it's just an option. So I just thought I'd do a kind of inverted reverse mohawk, whatever you want to call it. And, it was also
badass. Your hair's badass, Matt.
I was pissed off. All the stuff that was going on in the last 3-4 years was driving me crazy, as well as fighting 9/11. I just thought, I'll go back to my sort of punk years.
That's what I like to hear.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else? Tell the people where they can find you one last time before you go.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, Matt Campbell 911, or as I said, the best way of following the case and getting a link to the crowdfunder is on ic911.org.
Matt, I really appreciate you staying up late with us. I know you're in the UK. It's about 1 a.m. there. I'm so sorry about your brother. And you really are. I'm not just saying this to blow smoke. You're a hero for continuing to fight for your brother's honor. So you should be proud, even though it's a terribly tragic situation. You still have a lot to be proud about. So nice to meet you, Matt. Talk to you again soon.
I'm so fly, I'm aligned with the planes. My grind so refined, I got no time for no games. Ask yourself